Hi, my name is Catherine Isabel Easton. I am a filmmaker, I'm an actress, I'm a writer, and I'm a director. And I am going to tell you in this video how to make a feature film for practically nothing. You do not need big producers. You do not need tons of money. All you need is a really solid idea that you are deeply passionate about and some low-hanging fruit. We're going to get into all of that. We're going to go through some steps of what you can do right now, whether you have a good idea or not. We're going to talk about concepts. We're going to talk about the physical act of making the film. And then we are going to talk about things like film festivals, distribution, how to actually get your work out there, and yes, how to make money. This is going to be a part of a series. I'm going to be doing a lot of these videos. This is just the first one, so let's jump right in. So first, we need to talk about story. This is where it all begins. When I talk about low-hanging fruit, this is what I'm talking about. Let's say you've got maybe, $1,000. Let's just say that. Maybe you got $1,000, you want to throw it at a project. You cannot make a story that has big explosions or tons of special effects or this or that. You are going to have to tell a story that is about people, humanity. And when I talk about low-hanging fruit as either a writer, a director, an actor, wherever you are in this process, I want you to think about the things in your life that are really fresh to you. So for example, when I was making Borrelia borealis, it is about Lyme disease and it is about loneliness. And when I made this movie, it was during the 2020 pandemic. It was during a time where everybody was feeling completely closed off, totally lonely, whether you were with somebody or not. And I was going through this illness. I was very ill at the time, and I'm thankfully much better now. But at the time, it was very ironic because people were dying of COVID, and it was a very scary time. And I was immunocompromised with an autoimmune disease. And it was one of those moments in your life where something sort of comes together and you have an aha moment of, oh, that's why I was ill. That's why this happened. And it was like all of the solitaire cards sort of exploding all at once for me. I was having epiphany after epiphany. And at this point in my career, I had sold multiple scripts that never got made. You will go through that as a writer. Well, you'll option something and it won't ever get made. I was without representation. I still am. I had representation at one point. It didn't work out. And I was feeling incredibly helpless. I was feeling as if, well, is this just not going to happen for me? I had acted in multiple films. I had gone to school for acting. I had gotten multiple scripts onto the Academy Nickel shorthand list, which is a very prestigious script writing competition. I had been in the finals for things like Blue Cat screenplay competition, the final draft screenplay competition. I thought these things would mean something. They kind of did. I got a few calls here and there, but nothing was really moving my career forward. And at this point, I knew how to write a pretty solid script. I had done coverage work for multiple people. I had gotten paid for it. I do suggest understanding script structure. So that is something that you can absolutely learn through Final Draft. I highly recommend using the Final Draft app. It's sort of like self-teaching. It will help you a lot. Or you can read the book Screenplay by Sid Field. That is also very helpful. It's important to know the rules so then you can throw all the rules out. But you got to know them first, if that makes sense. I was in so much pain. I cannot even tell you how much pain I was in. And I had thought, I want to shoot something while everyone is shut down. Everyone is inside right now. Maybe I could make some kind of like Zoom movie, but not a Zoom movie, but utilizing actors that, my friends that I know that are in Rhode Island, that are in New York City, that are down the street, but I can't see or be with right now because this was when everything was locked down. It was this strange time where everybody had time, but we couldn't be together. And so I had to move fast, and I felt like I'm going to throw this story up. Like it was something that just came. Sometimes you get a lightning bolt and you got to freaking ride it, baby. So I thought, I do not actually have time to sit here and bang out an actual script because I don't really know exactly what I'm going to say. And I kind of feel like there's an art of creation here where if I just let the cameras roll and I kind of have like a Curb Your Enthusiasm style outline of sorts where I know that I need to get from point A to point B story-wise. How do I get there with my actors? I didn't want it to be overly written. I had done that before. I had won awards for it. It was fine. But there was something about the art of creation, co-creation, yes, with the universe and the movie gods, but my fellow actors, with my husband at that point, there was something that just needed to come forth, and it needed to come forth fast because we weren't going to be locked down forever. We weren't going to be getting those checks forever. We weren't going to be having this time forever. And it was incredibly important that I get, like, it was one of those things where I felt like if I don't get this out of me, like, it's going to be corrosive. You know what I'm saying? So I wrote an outline in about a week. And what I did was I sort of made it a collage. And I came up with the name Borrelia because that is the main bacteria in Lyme disease. And then Borealis because, as you can see, I am a big fan of the Aurora Borealis. And I knew that this story was going to be about light and about electricity and how love and light sort of travels through time. And I knew it was going to be about astral projection, which was something that I was deeply interested in, and lucid dreaming, something that I had just learned that I could do. And I wanted to explore it further. I was reading this really incredible book called Astral Dynamics. Highly recommend if you're a creative. And I wanted to just dive into the world, and I wanted to see what would happen. And I treated it, this is what's important, I treated it like an experiment. Everything that I had tried so hard for, I'm going to make it to the Academy Awards, I'm going to get the validation, I'm going to win, I threw it all out. I just thought, I want to explore. I want to have sort of a childlike wonder and a beginner's mindset, even though, sure, have I taken all the classes? Do I know how this should be done? Threw it all out the window. And we kind of had to, right? Because it was these unprecedented times. So I had the outline, and from the outline, I made a script sort of breakdown of things that I wanted, certain things that I knew would need to be said. So every now and then I would throw in a line from one of my actors or me to be like, well, we are going to need to find a way to say this line. But mostly I wanted it to feel like it was an improv environment, a very structured improv environment. Some of my actors were very comfortable with improv. Some of my actors were not, and they all did an incredible job. The most important thing for me was to have an experience, was to have fun. And I took away any attachment to results, because truly it was that strange time during the shutdown where it almost felt as if we might, was it the end of the world? Like, might we all die? Like, what is happening? It was such a disorienting time that this is what I'm talking about, low-hanging fruit for us as characters to sort of hold on to and play make-believe with, because the movie itself is about a hypothetical virus situation. It's not a COVID movie. It is not about COVID. It is about sort of a different style of maybe what a virus could be. But more importantly, it's about fascism. And it is about love, and it's about human connection, and it's about trust. And so when we set out to do this, one of the other things that I had sort of practice with was, and I do suggest this, so this is part of like the story concept, low-hanging fruit. Something that I had been playing with was, because we had all been doing this sort of Zoom thing for a while where we were talking to each other on camera, and it became normal, like, hey, we'll have a wine date with our friends and this is kind of weird, and we're trying to keep in touch with each other. Someone had gifted me 12 sessions with a life coach, and it was, well, that's its own story. But the point is, what came from that was, I started realizing that sometimes there's things that I need to say out loud. I don't necessarily need to say them to a person. And at the time, my father had just died. My mother had dementia, and I couldn't talk to her anymore. And it was just a very trying time for me. And so I had this idea where I set up, just like this, an iPad where I would talk to them. And it felt therapeutic, saying the things I could never say to them while they were alive. And then that became a part of the story where I thought, this might be something. There's a stream of consciousness aspect of this. So whether you're a writer, whether you're an actor, you're a director, or whether, again, you are just a fan of film, we all have a creativity that resides within us, that when we are able to be calm enough to hold on to that stream of consciousness, to sort of grab hold of that lightning bolt of creativity and let it speak out of us, very magic things can happen. Now, this may not be your journey. I am not sitting here saying, don't write a script. You may want to write a script. I wrote a script for my next one, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But for this one, I just want to say that, yes, it can sometimes be relatively daunting to go about the process of writing a script and locking down the story. But if you've got a kernel of an idea, sometimes it is better to just go forward with it and start experimenting. And it doesn't mean that you can't change things later on down the line, because that's exactly what would happen. So what ended up happening was my husband puts the camera on me, and basically, most of the movie is me sort of peppered with a character that plays a doctor, peppered with sort of a toxic best friend, and then peppered with the love interest, who is Anthony Goes, who you see a lot on my channel. He's the love interest in all my movies. So basically, there was all of this other stuff that we needed to get. Things of the time where we got to take supplements, taking a bath, her talking to her parents through these sort of recorded video sessions. And it ended up being just like the collage I made of what I thought the movie would be, which I had put things, like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind was a big inspiration for this movie. And I also gave myself permission. So this is what I'm talking about with low-hanging fruit. And now I'm speaking directly to the performers and to the writers and to the multi-hyphenates out there. I was in a lot of pain when I made this movie, and I let myself be messy. I wasn't trying to be pretty. I wasn't trying to be sexy. I wasn't trying to look cool. I let myself essentially give into every single self-esteem issue I ever had. I let myself say the things that I never, ever would say to anyone, because I would have deemed it too embarrassing. But when you put the mask on of a character, you are suddenly free, because it's the character, right? It's the character. Now, I won Best Actress at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival, and my main actor, Anthony Goes, won Best Supporting Actor. And everything that we did, we created together. So again, we had this roadmap of where I wanted the characters to kind of go, but then there was always an element of surprise. And the reason why it worked is because it was authentic. So the first thing that you need to think about is authenticity. What's authentic to you? Sure, do you have it in you to write that big explosion sci-fi spaceship movie? Absolutely. And who's to say you can't make a spaceship in your apartment? There are so many things you can do from perspective in a homemade way, like especially with the tools that we have available to us now. So don't limit yourself in terms of that. If you need to tell a movie, a story on a spaceship, go for it. More power to you. You know what you're capable of in terms of being able to build things. Just know that in general, we tend to outsource a lot of our power. So I know that you probably are thinking, well, then I'm going to need a set decorator, and then I'm going to need a production designer, and I'm going to need a hair and makeup person. I'm here to tell you, and listen, those are wonderful. And if you have friends that are willing to do that for you for free because you don't have any money to make this movie, oh my gosh, please make it happen. But you do not need them. You can teach yourself how to do makeup. You can teach yourself how to decorate a set. You can teach yourself how to light. I mean, there are tutorials for everything out there. So don't sit there in the corner and think, yeah, I need to do it, but I need an AD and I need a script supervisor. I mean, I had tried to make movies with my friends for years. I live in Hollywood. I'm surrounded by talented, artistic people. Come on, guys, let's just do it. Yeah, well, we can't do it without a script supervisor. Well, yeah, that would be freaking great, but I'm never gonna, I can't afford that. I'm doing this on my credit card, man. Like, I think we can do it without a script supervisor. Well, no, we really can't. No, you don't want to work with people like that. You want to work with people, if you're working with people at all, if you're collaborating, and you will have to collaborate a little bit. Not everybody can be Bo Burnham here. There will be a certain amount of collaboration required. You want to work with people that are like multi-hyphenate as well. Yeah, I can do makeup, and I can light myself, and I can do XYZ, and I can help, I can edit, I can color, I can do a sound edit, I can do whatever it may be. You want to work with the people that don't feel inhibited by the restrictions that you will inherently have on a low budget production. Which leads me to the next subject. So now we are talking about the practicalities of making a film. Yes, you need a camera. You need sound. You need lights. You will need certain things to make this happen. So in terms of that, I am not going to sit here and say, well, you're going to need to shoot this on an Alexa, and you're going to need to get this kind of lens and whatever. Would it be freaking great if you could rent an Alexa? Oh my gosh, yes, do it if you can. If you can afford to do that, if you can afford to get a cinematographer, do that. But there is absolutely no reason to be stuck on not making a film if you don't have those things, or you don't have access to those things, because the phones that we have and the devices, things like iPads, they are making cameras now inside these machines that are better and have higher resolution and have more bells and whistles than certain movie cameras do, okay, or did. So Steven Soderbergh does this. Danny Boyle. These are like Oscar-winning, Oscar-nominated directors. They are using materials like this. So it's important to remember that even though, is it your dream to shoot something on an iPhone? Maybe not. But can you do it if you needed to? Hell yeah, you can. There are tutorials on how you can do that. The point of the matter is there are gimbals that you can get on frickin' TikTok shop or Amazon. You can get sliders online. You can get things where you can mount your iPhone or your iPad in order to do the moves that you want to do. And if you're using, you're going to be needing to use an editing program like whether it be Adobe, whether it be CapCut, whatever it is that you're editing on, you can do internal zooms within that software. So like, regardless of how you decide to shoot your film, as long as things are in focus, that's important, figure that out, do some test runs, and as long as you have good sound, you are good to go, okay? I do recommend in shooting 4K or higher, because once your finished product is up on, say, a streaming site of some kind, they will require you to be in at least 4K. So please keep that in mind. You don't want to be shooting in like 1080p or something like that. So figure out whatever that may mean for you, but it's important also in terms of the audio. So this is where we get into the practicalities. The first telltale sign of something low budget is bad sound, right? There's nothing worse, and it makes people tune out, and you don't want to deal with it, right? You're not going to watch something that has bad sound. You don't need to be some genius with sound. There are Bluetooth microphones that you can utilize. You'll see a lot of people using Bluetooth microphones who are influencers, or they've got the thing right here and they're just, they're talking into it. Bluetooth microphones are your friend, and they are cheap as fuck. They're like $20, $30, you get a couple of packs of those, you sync them to your device, and you hide them like any lav that you would under your clothes, in a blouse, in a this, whatever, and you don't have having to deal with a mic pack. Now, again, if you are lucky enough to have the money to pay for a sound person that's going to cost you at least $600 to $800 a day, that is great. I would say if you are thinking, okay, I've got $1,000, or I've got, $5,000 to make a feature. If you go and put your money into anything, put it into the sound, baby. Pay for professional sound if you can. But if you cannot, you absolutely do not need to worry about that. Should not be a hindrance as to, oh, I can't do it now because I don't have the right gear. You can get that gear on Amazon. You can teach yourself how to use it. It is not hard. And then again, within editing systems, you can smooth things out. You can reduce noise. There is software where you can smooth it out. So again, I am not here to sit here and say, oh, you don't need sound, or oh, you don't need a sound editor. The reality is, if you're making a low budget movie, it's generally just, you've got something you're so passionate about. You've got a story that you need to get out there. That in general, unless you've got family money or something that you've set aside, you are not going to be able to pay for such things. And then we go and we do the thing, well, I couldn't do this for less than 20. I need $1 million to do this. Well, guess what? Do you want to make a movie that is, made? Maybe it's not perfect, but it's made. And it's done, and that's a feather in your hat that you will always have that will lead to other work, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Or do you want to essentially just let these roadblocks get in your way, and then you're 90 years old and you're like, I could have made the movie, I should have, and it's like we overcomplicate these things. So I'm not saying that those jobs aren't important, but it is not realistic to think that everybody can afford such things, okay? So in terms of the practical production, you need to figure out what it is exactly that you need in terms of equipment. And again, you can buy these lights on Amazon for $20, $50, $30, whatever. And so it is the practicalities of the filmmaking. And then it's also, here's another big one to think about. What do you, just like with your story, what's fresh to you? What's fresh to you? What do you have to say right now? Just like with that, you have to think about locations. I practically shot 2 films in my apartment, in a 1-bedroom apartment in the Valley, okay? And I've won awards for them, and it's led to other work, and it's essentially launched my film career as a filmmaker, as a legitimate filmmaker. And I hate to say the word legitimate, but, sometimes you have to do things for yourself in order for people to see that you can do them. I waited for so long for somebody to see that girl, she can do it. She can be the star of a movie. She can carry a movie. She can direct a movie. Nobody was giving me they were not giving me those chances, and then they say there's this ladder you have to climb up. You can do it yourself. You do not need permission. You just have to give permission to yourself. And if you cannot give permission to yourself, look at me right now. Look me in the eyes. I'm giving you permission. I give you permission to make your movie however it is that you want to make it, and it does not need to be perfect. In fact, this is what leads me to the next thing, okay? So we're talking about locations. If you only have your studio apartment, that does not mean you can't make a film. Now, regardless of where you are in the world, whether you're in the US, you're out of the US, whether you're in Hollywood, you're not in Hollywood, you're in New York, whatever, you're going to know what's at your disposal. But you know what's always at your disposal? The beach, the park, streets. Hey, you may be friends with the person who owns the cafe. Maybe they'll let you use it. Most people will let you use their spaces if you're not bothering anybody. I mean, here's the thing. You can go and shoot at a cafe, get permission from the owner, buy a lot of shit, buy some shit. Don't get involved in telling their patrons, hey, can you be quiet? I'm shooting a scene. Make it a part of the ambiance. You may have some continuity issues, sure, with sound. But again, just think of where you can make concessions with that, like what will make the most sense for you. And you can create dynamic environments where it doesn't feel like you've got much to work with. Again, I made 2 movies basically in a 1-bedroom apartment. The second movie it was after COVID, so we were able to rent some places and, use our friends' houses, for example. You need to think about certain things like what's at my disposal, and then create your story around that. Like, for example, my friends had a really beautiful patio for the second movie that I made called Valley Heart. They had this really beautiful outdoor patio with tons of trees and flowers. And I thought, man, I could make that look like San Diego. I needed to make it look like it was a rich San Diego house. Again, just from one angle. lush garden, beautiful patio wear. We got the fruits, we got the vegetables, we got the big hats, whatever. It's a great scene. And it's just in someone's backyard in Reseda. It isn't a fancy house, and we don't see the house. We just see that part of the garden that we can suggest that could be that's a maybe a famous person's house. Maybe it's a rich person's house. And that leads me to talking about costume, wardrobe, things like that. So a lot of times people, I mean, I had worked with a director that I had written a short film, and I talked to him about directing it. This was before I realized it was a director. I thought I had to sort of outsource these things. And he had this list of like the things you need, right? You gotta have hair and makeup. Again, would that be freaking great to be able to afford hair and makeup? Absolutely, yes. But come on, can we do it without? And maybe it'll be better because people will look more real. I mean, I can't stand it personally when I'm watching a film or a TV show and you can see the line, or you can see, you can just see like, well, that person, they have fake eyelashes on, or they've got, you just need to find what's authentic to what the characters would be doing. So think about the places that you can utilize. Think about the hair and makeup that you can realistically do yourself. And if you cannot do it, you can teach yourself. Once again, we are living in a time of great technology. We can teach ourselves how to do anything online, all right? There are people doing incredible things. Do the tutorials, learn. There was an aspect of Borrelia borealis where I needed to have a bunch of bruises. And you can buy a bruise kit. You can buy a bruise kit online. I believe it's Bill Nye, and not the science guy. They make a makeup, and you know what I'm talking about, theater people. You know what I'm talking about. And I remember when I had bruises done in the past on professional sets, there was sort of this strange, like wiry sponge with like weird holes in it that could make sort of something look like it was a scab. And I remembered that. And I went and I watched tutorials of how to build a bruise. And so we're building the green, and then we're building the purple, and then we're building sort of the red over it. And then does it have a scab? And then getting the right kind of blood. Is this the kind of blood that washes out? Caro syrup, cocoa powder, and a little bit of natural red food dye are going to go a long way, baby, and what is that going to cost you? $10? I'm just saying, you need to remember what it's like to be a child playing make-believe. Okay, you need to remember what it's like to put on a show for your family and friends, when you were a kid, or when you were putting on that theater production in middle school at summer camp, or when you were doing community theater as a kid. You need to remember it is those tenets of things. Go to the Salvation Army. If you need set dressing, you go to the Salvation Army. Get a new end table for $5. Buy your whole wardrobe. We need to sort of throw the vanity out the window and start thinking practically about how to do these things, because the world needs your art more than ever. We are living in a corporatized time, capitalistic time, where the gap between the haves and the have-nots just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we keep thinking, well, I can't do that. Someone has to give me money to do that. No, you need to do it for yourself. Okay, so you shoot your movie. I know I'm glossing over a lot of stuff here. Again, I'm going to be doing a lot of videos on this, and we're going to get more into the practicalities. So your movie is shot now. You've got it. You've got all the raw footage. And some of it works, some of it doesn't. When we were doing Borrelia, something that I learned was the improv could only take us so far. It was an intense process that, yes, editing together for continuity, especially when you're dealing with some video phone actors, was a little difficult. Would I do it that way again? No. No, I would not. But in terms of the freshness of what was happening and the beauty that was unfolding, once you make the decision, and that's the main thing. Once you make the decision, I am a filmmaker. I am here to document the good, the bad, the ugly. Whatever comes up, I'm not going to be rigid about this process. And that's also the most important thing too. You cannot be terribly rigid. God knows, we've got the stigma of the director that's like, God, right? I'm the director and this is how it is. And God knows if you're an actor, you've probably worked with directors that are so rigid in exactly what it is that they need from you. But it's not naturalistic, and maybe it looks really cool in a shot, but it's not working, right? You need to be completely non-rigid about all of that and go with what's working. I'm talking about heart-led art here, okay? As long as you're being authentic, it does not need to be perfect. Look at Borrelia. There are a million things in Borrelia, and it won awards. I won a Best Director award at the Film Thread Awards. Again, this is not about bragging. This is just about to show you. I am not saying any of this with vanity. It is to show you that it is possible. We were nominated for Best Picture at multiple film festivals. There was a bidding war for us in terms of finding distribution. We're going to talk about distribution in a moment. All I'm saying is, I think that we are sold the lie that, things need to be absolutely perfect, and they do not need to be. They need to be authentic to you. That is the only thing that matters. And everything else, it will fall into place. Because again, if you're looking at Borrelia, there are certain continuity things when you're like, okay, well, that isn't exactly perfect, especially when you're talking about video and chatting and whatever. I realized we were going to have to do some reshoots for stuff. I had lost a bunch of weight in between the shoot. I had gotten well. And and so my face was a little thinner than in certain aspects. And so, it was like, all right, how do we justify this? How do we, in the filming of Seven, Brad Pitt famously, he shattered his hand in a stunt gone wrong. And he had tendons screwed up. They couldn't stop shooting. And he needed to wear a brace on his hand for like the duration of the shoot, or for a good portion of the shoot. And they were, it was at the beginning of the movie that this happened. And so Fincher famously is like, all right, well, fuck, what the fuck do we do now? And they had to write it into the screen. They had to just write it in. They had to find a way to justify it. And it was fine. You totally buy it. So when things happen, hopefully you're not breaking your hand, but when things happen where either you have to go back, or, oh crap, there's a continuity thing, or oh crap, my hair isn't the same, or whatever, find a way to embrace it. There's always a way. There is always, always, always a way. So you've got your finished film and you're going through the editing process. This is another sort of roadblock that comes up. People go, okay, well, I'm not an editor. Yes, you are. Yes, you are, baby. Now, listen, would it be great to be able to hire an editor? Hell yeah, it would. Hell yeah. But it doesn't mean that you can't do it if you are not an editor. We are living in the age of Instagram. We are living in the age of YouTube Shorts. We are living in the age where everybody, baby, is an editor, whether you know it or not. So that is another skill. I mean, hell, the guy that I believe there were two guys that won the Oscar for Everything Everywhere All at Once. They did not go to film school. Again, I'm not trying to shit on film school. I think school and education is absolutely wonderful. But if you cannot afford an editor, if you don't know an editor, you can absolutely edit your own material and you will be better for it. They learned how to edit via YouTube. They watched YouTube tutorials. They didn't even pay. They didn't even pay for courses. They just watched the free tutorials that you can get on YouTube, learned how to edit, and on Premiere, I believe, and they edited an entire movie and won Oscars for it. And you want to know, if you go back and you look at that film, this is a perfect example. Everything Everywhere All at Once. That is one of the weirdest movies ever made. There's such a homemade stamp on it. Hot dog fingers. And whether it's your cup of tea or not, it doesn't matter. No one had ever made a movie like that before. Sure, does it sort of cherry pick from certain things? Absolutely. But no one had ever put a stamp on it like that. And if you would have brought that movie to a huge ass studio and been like, hi, so I'm going to need $20 million for this hot dog finger movie, the studio probably would have laughed them out of the frickin', you know what I mean? Like, they made that movie for very little. They had some big ass stars. They were lucky to get some big ass stars. But even if you don't have stars, that is also okay. So this is another thing to talk about. I think a lot of people go, well, we need a movie, but we need a name. No, you don't, girl. Boy, we do not need name. No. I mean, sure. Would it be great if you could get George Clooney? Absolutely. Yeah. But it's not a hindrance if you don't have it. And if anything, what we need more of now, I think, are pods, groups of people that have worked together for a while, people you've done theater with, people that are your friends, even people that are non-actors. I use plenty of non-actors in multiple things in my films. Maybe not lead parts, but it can, look at One Battle After Another. Some of the army guys, and the guy that in One Battle After Another, I forgot the name of the character, but he's the one who provides the little the sonar device thing to Leo, and he helps him change his name and all that. That guy was not an actor. And he's one of the most memorable parts of that freaking movie. And you love him because there's a certain authenticity there. So use what you have, all right? Teach yourself how to edit. It seems like it's a daunting thing. It's truly not a daunting thing. It is not. And the best thing that you can do in terms of learning how to physically edit, and so you're cutting and you're cutting and you're cutting and you're cutting and you're doing all that stuff, and you're learning how to do the sound edit, and you're learning how to relight in post and pump this up and change this and find your LUTs and find the coloring that you want, whatever it may be. Finding perhaps stock music. That's another, you can pay for stock music. You can make some of your own music if you want. You can do this John Carpenter style. There's a really wonderful app called J6, and it's like a synth generator, and you can do some crazy cool shit on that, and you can just do it yourself, and it's the easiest thing. You just sort of press a note, you press C, then you press A, and it create this beautiful ambiance underneath. So if you do not have access to those things, do not say, well, then I can't do it. You can do it. It is possible. So you now have your film. You've figured out a way to edit it, whether you did it yourself or you outsource certain things. And once you've got your rough cut together, you may want to get some friends together, have them help you sort of see what is missing. So once you've got your rough cut together of your film, you need to find the right people to screen your film to. So the first mistake that I made when I made Borrelia Borealis was I had made a 2-hour and 45-minute rough cut because I wasn't exactly sure exactly what it was yet, because there were some horror aspects to it. There were just a lot of themes that I was exploring. And it just was sort of like, okay, here's my collage. I don't know exactly what's working and what's not. I need outside eyes on this. So there were people that gave me notes that knew that it was a work in progress and gave me notes based on that. And then there were people that gave me notes that didn't really, I don't know if they didn't realize it was a work in progress, or that I was sort of looking for, that creative process where when you're giving somebody notes for something, you don't want to put your stamp on it. You want to see what their stamp is and then sort of adjust, and ask them, like, what are your intentions with this? Did you want this moment to be sad or funny? Because right now it's reading as funny, and I think you wanted it to be sad, so you need to recut it in such a way so that you don't want to risk people laughing here, right? So things like that, you need to find people that are going to be able to help you get to your vision and understand your vision. So do not send this to 20 people. This is not filmmaking by committee. And this is where things can go horribly wrong. If you're listening to everybody's notes and then you go back and you re-edit, you're going to have a disaster, because you cannot listen to everybody's notes. So you really need to think about the things that you don't want to budge on, the things that you know you will not change, the things that you know in your heart, even if perhaps it's not entirely working yet, the things that you will not change, that you will not budge on. And then you need to think of people in your life that will add something to what your vision is. So, and it may not always be the people that you think. So this isn't necessarily the time to show your film to your mother. You know what I'm saying? It may be. Maybe your mom would give you great, advice. But in general, this is not the time to send it out to the family. This is more a time to think about your artistic friends that surround you, that A, whose work you respect, and B, people that understand the art of note giving. So when you start getting the notes back on your film, you want to start looking for the consistencies. Wow. This was something that was really clear to me, but 5 people did not understand this. So clearly we're going to have to find a way to get more specific. So this is where reshoots and B-roll come in. So we got our notes back. We were trying to figure out exactly, we were basically filling in holes. Okay, we're going to need an insert shot of her dialing the phone here. We're going to need a way to show the bridge is the gap between this scene and this scene because for some reason it's not making sense. So we're going to need a bridge scene here. And that's where things like reshoots, B-roll, and whatnot come in. So know that even when you finish principal photography, you ain't done shooting, baby. So if, for example, you had pink hair in the movie, I wouldn't go back and dye it black immediately. I would wait until you get through the rough cut. You start getting notes for the rough cut because 9 times out of 10, you're going to probably have to get back on camera. And so I wouldn't change your appearance or have your actors change their appearance dramatically if that's possible. Okay, so now you've got your finished film. All right, so your film is finished. You are happy. It's not a rough cut anymore. You've done a sound pass. You've smoothed things over. We've got the right aspect ratio. Everything is legit. You're not now here. Let's talk about music licensing. All right. Some of us get really hung up on using particular songs. Like I, in the beginning, really was obsessed with utilizing Ladytron. I actually was obsessed with using Kate Bush, and we reached out to her multiple times and never heard back. Wonder why. I'm like, hi, can I give you $2? She's running up that hill. No, you don't want that? Okay, thanks. We had reached out to some bands, and some of them let us use the songs for a festival run, like Ladytron. We messaged their manager, and at that time, they were like, wow, someone is creating something. Let them use our music. So they actually let us use their music, not for the final cut of the film, but for the festival run. So you may be able to utilize certain songs. You may be able to get, licensing for, like, say, a festival run, which is helpful. Some may say, oh, well, why would I do that for the festival run? Well, because that is where you're going to meet your buyers. We're going to talk about that in a second. But in a festival run, you're playing for an audience, you're playing for buyers, you're playing for possible distribution companies, you're playing for programmers, and if you need to use a particular song to really get something across, who's to say once you get a distribution deal, maybe they'll pay for it? Who knows? You just don't know. So dot your I's and cross your T's when it comes to that, because if you get into a prestigious festival and you do not have the rights to certain songs, they will kick you out. So be smart about that. And if not, there are plenty of, there's Story Blocks, Purple Planet. Like I said, you can generate some of your own tones with the J6 synthesizer. There's so many different ways in order to create music and ambiance. Just make sure that you have the rights. I know that goes without saying, but that is really, you can't just use any song. Like, you have to be really smart about this. So once you have that figured out, you are then going through the process of either, okay, do I release this movie on my own, or do I try and find a distributor? Now, this is its own section because this is where shit really gets insane. So let's talk about distribution. For Borrelia and for Valley Heart, we got into many festivals. We actually submitted to Sundance twice for Borrelia. It really felt like we were going to get in. I know we got close. We didn't ultimately get in. I was heartbroken, but that's not the end of the line. So, a lot of these bigger film festivals now, they're so corporatized. They're so bought and sold. And you've got A-listers everywhere, and you've got movies made for $20 million calling themselves indie. And yeah, maybe they are indie, but your $20 million movie you can't compare it to my $5,000 movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, and Sundance and South by Southwest, like they will let in, smaller movies with no names every now and then, depending on the subject matter. But don't make your movie for those festivals. Make your movie for you and see where things line up. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want to cater to anything here. So once you start the festival circuit, if that's your route, and I do want to say, I do think it's important. I will put my opinion here. You can do with it what you will. I do think it's important to do festivals as a filmmaker because you meet other filmmakers, you meet other programmers, you meet people, and you need a community if you are a filmmaker. You absolutely do. And it's also very, very beneficial to, when you're screening your work, to see how it plays. See where people laugh, see where people cry, see what people's feedback is at the end of it. It is invaluable to do that as a filmmaker, and really the only place you can do that unless you get theatrical distribution, which you might, and I did for my second movie. I didn't for my first, but I did for my second movie. It is incredible to be able to play your film in front of an audience. That's what we want, right? See how it plays. So one of the ways you can do that is, yes, festivals. And yes, they cost money here and there. So remember to add that to your budget. Know that regardless of whatever your budget is, whatever it may be, and we'll talk about how to budget a film and how to do all the bells and whistles on a film in another video. But for this video, remember that you are going to need to budget for film festival costs to get to the film festival if it's out of town. Because the worst thing in the world too, I mean, yeah, sure, you put in the $45 to the festival fee, whatever, fine. Put that on the credit card. But if it's in, Austria, things to keep in mind. Can you get in a car to drive there? Would you have to take a plane? If so, what would the plane tickets cost? What's the rough... Put that in your budget. It is important. There's nothing worse than getting into a film festival and going, oh crap, I can't afford to go. I mean, come on, that's heartbreaking. You want to be able to attend the film festivals that you get into. You want to go to every single one. You want to meet these people. This is how you meet potential employers. This is how you meet fellow collaborators. This is how you get into the network, because film festival programmers talk to each other, okay? There is a network. And maybe you didn't get into Sundance that year, but the programmer at Sundance knows the one at Studio City. And you know what? They talk. Were you amenable? Were you kind? Were you a freaking asshole? Did you show up drunk? Things like that. This is your career. So even if it's a small film festival, even if one person is at your screening, that is a blessing. Okay. So there is no film festival that is too small. You want to screen your film. So in terms of distribution, obviously we all know, the Iron Lung guy he was the YouTuber that got a movie. There's been multiple YouTubers that have distributed their own films and made a killing. They've made lots and lots of money doing that. Is that realistic for everybody? Of course not. You need to have, many of these people had, huge followings, and so they had a built-in audience. If you do not have a built-in audience, film festivals and working with a sales agent, and this is another thing to put into the budget, working with a sales agent. So I made the mistake the first time when I was making my first film, Borrelia Borealis. I did not use a sales agent. Now, there are plenty of crooks out there. Do your research. I'm not going to talk about specific companies, but if you want to Google, it's easily look upable who I used and whatnot for my films. But I would highly suggest, and I'm going to make a whole other video on sales agents and distribution companies. This is going to be a whole other video, but just know that. So working with certain sales agents for your independent film is beneficial in multiple ways. This sales agent has access to companies that may buy your film outright or give you some kind of percentage. Some call it a minimum guarantee. Some have a percentage. Some it's a 50-50 split. Some are highway robbers and you're never going to see a dime. It depends on what your intentions are for your film. Do you want people to be able to rent it on Amazon? Do you want to just put it on Tubi? Do you want to just upload it to YouTube and see how it goes and get watch hours? If so, what's your plan for that? How will you advertise for that? The benefit to using a distribution company, and again, there's a lot that are janky as hell and will that are not necessarily the greatest, but even in sort of the worst case scenario, and I feel like I kind of had the worst case scenario for the first film because they didn't do anything to advertise for us, and it was before I had a YouTube channel, and it was before I realized how much power I have as an individual. But what's great about utilizing a distribution company is that they can push your film into they can put it on an airplane. They can put it on a hotel room screen. They can, get it into Barnes and Noble, get you DVDs, and people are, physical media is coming back. And there are multiple like foreign film markets that might be interested in your film. So using a sales agent. Now, a sales agent, I will tell you right now, is going to cost you anywhere between $2,000 and higher, but I would say at minimum $2,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. It just depends on who you use, and you can measure for yourself if that's worth it to you. Now, if you are a self-starter, like if I was doing it and I was making a movie for $1,000 and I was getting it out there, or $5,000, even $20,000, I don't know if I would use a sales agent because I'm pretty confident in my ability to boost posts and get people interested in my shit. 5 years ago, not so much. I felt like I was just like, lost in the darkness, in the wilderness, so to speak. So just Google sales agents. You will meet sales agents. This is another thing. When you go to film festivals, there's sales agents there, baby, and they will court you and you will get emails. And some of them are completely slimy and some of them are not. It just depends on what you see for your film. And, there are a lot of people that are hung up on getting their money back. Now, here's another thing. When you make your first film, I need for you to accept in your heart that you ain't probably ever going to see that money again. Okay? Just accept it. Just accept it. It doesn't mean that you won't make money, but you probably won't, but that's not why we're doing it. I'm not saying you can't. You can absolutely make money. I made money on my second film. I didn't make money on my first film, but I also didn't have a huge, burden on my first film. I had a bigger burden for my second film, and now we get checks every quarter, and it's wonderful, and it's a worldwide release, and we used a sales agent, and so we had a better result. Okay, because what ends up happening with a lot of these distribution companies, and this is where it gets a little shisty, is they have all these costs. Okay, well, we have the cost of PR, and we have the cost of making the DVD, and we have the cost of doing this, and we have the cost of doing the captions. Fine, and they overinflate these things, and they make it to such a way where they're making a little bit of money on your movie and you ain't making anything. Now, if you're okay with that, that's fine. It depends on the company, but just make sure you're very clear on the terms. We were much more clear on the terms with the second company that we worked with. There were their own headaches with that, even through the sales agent. And again, you live, you learn. But the whole point of this is I'm not sitting here telling you, okay, honey, go ahead and mortgage your house and sell your car and whatever. Put in $100,000 to your first movie and think that you're going to make it into Sundance and you're going to do this and it's going to change your life and you're going to win an Oscar. Those things could happen. I'm not saying they can't happen, but chances are probably not. And we need to sort of use the Buddhist way of non-attachment, right? We're doing art for art's sake here. So when you reduce the burden, it hurts a little bit less. I mean, there was a guy that I knew years ago. He spent he got an inheritance when his parents died. And he used every last cent of that inheritance and put it into a movie that went nowhere. It flopped. It went nowhere. And he kept trying to find this deal that would match what he spent on the movie. And the people are going, well, we don't think that movie is worth that much. And so you have to think in terms of like sustainability. If you're sitting on some kind of windfall, if you're sitting on, something that you have a lot, take care of yourself first, but by no means should you be going without to make a film. It is not that important. And there are so many different ways you can make a movie without hurting yourself financially. If you're making a movie non-union, much easier. Much easier. Except I will say that SAG does have a micro budget agreement now, which means under $20,000, And so if you are able to use an agreement like that, you can make an agreement with the actors. You can use SAG actors, you maybe, more professional actors if you want to go that route. It's just a question of where you want to put your money and what you deem to be the most important thing. Only you know what that is. So then once you, figure out what, you went with the sales agent, you start entertaining distribution offers. Now, here's where I don't want to be fatalistic here, and I don't want to be depressing, but I had a film executive tell me once, look, I don't care about your movie. I don't care what the movie's about. All that matters is the 1-minute trailer and the poster. That's it. So if you understand graphic design and can make a killer poster, do that yourself. Go on Fiverr, pay a couple $100, make someone give you a couple of poster options. That is something you are going to have to think about as an independent filmmaker. I think there were a lot of times where I thought, well, once we get distribution, we'll get someone to make us a poster. And they may take what you've done and recut your trailer and redo your poster. That happened to us the second time around. And it's hilarious, the things that they changed, but and they're going to change it based on how they think they can sell it. Like, for example, my second film, I always sort of saw it as sort of like a comedy drama, a drama comedy. They rebranded it as sort of like a thriller action movie. And like, that's fine. It did bigger money because of that. And it got deemed an action movie because there was one sequence where I have a character running down the street and they may or may not be getting killed. And then there isn't a car chase, but we shoot them within the car and they're sort of screaming at each other and it's like chaotic. And you could interpret like, oh, it's a car chase, but it's not. You know what I'm saying? So being open to things like that, but know that you are going to have to make your own poster and know that you're going to have to cut your own trailer. So again, budget for these things if that's something that you want someone else to do, or just know that you're going to have to take the time to do that before you get things into the film festivals. When you make your Film Freeway account, those are things you're going to have figured out. It is not enough to just have a finished film, even though that feels like it should be enough. It is not enough to have just simply a finished film. You will need to have poster options, maybe not just one. Distribution companies want to see. Basically, we're living in a time now where you want to take away any question mark, right? And distribution companies want something that's already packaged. So get that 1-minute, 90-second trailer up, whatever it may be, have options for that. Maybe make an edit where if there's horror elements to your film, make a horror edit of the trailer. What's the trailer saying? Make a thriller edit of the trailer. Make a drama edit of the trailer. What are you going for? It's like when you're an actor and you're getting headshots and, you put on the glasses and you're like, I'm smart. Or like you have the nurse's uniform on and you're like, well, clearly I could be a cop. It's like that. You need to make it easy for them to understand what it is that you're doing. So this video is about, almost an hour long or a little bit over an hour long. I'm going to be going into talking about very specific things in later videos, but I wanted to kind of do a broad overview of my journey with this. If for those of you that are still here watching, tell me in the comments, like, what do you want to know about? I want to help. I don't want to gatekeep any information. I know a lot of stuff. I've been around the block, if you know what I mean. And I simply want to help. I want to be the person that I didn't have when I was making these films and maybe a light in the darkness for somebody. So tell me in the comments what you're thinking, what you want to make, how you want to make it. Ask me questions. I will answer you. I will be in the comments. Let's talk about it. Let's be there for each other. Let's make a community. I'm going to be making another video called Quantum Filmmaking. It's going to be coming out soon. More on that later. I appreciate you for listening to all of this, and I will see you on the flip. Bye.